Today, we're going to be talking about creating pins for your holiday content and somewhat of just creating pins in general for your Pinterest to really help promote your business and start to drive some traffic to your website. So let's first look at understanding Pinterest. So there's a good chance that all of you have either heard of or used or have some knowledge of Pinterest, but if you're not familiar with the platform, it's often looked at as a social media platform. And while that's kind of true, it's really much more of a global visual search engine. And so while even I list it under social media offerings, the way that I create content for Pinterest is very different from any other social media platform. It also has 367 million users, so that's a lot of people, but it's often underutilized by a lot of small businesses. And so what's really great about Pinterest is not only are they global and on like every single platform, it feels like, right? You probably do what I do a million times where you'll click on a picture and it'll automatically have that little pin circle in the top corner, and now it's asking you to pin it to your Pinterest and you're like, this is not what I wanted. So it's literally everywhere, which is great when you do want to pin things. And it's also great because it means a lot of people have access to it. So if you can get your content onto the platform and get people seeing it, there's a lot that you can do to build your business. The other nice thing about Pinterest is people go there really ready to buy, right? So whether they're planning for a new remodel of their home, or maybe they're looking for a Christmas list, or they're planning a party. I mean, there's so many times I've gone to Pinterest to plan a holiday themed party before we weren't allowed to see anyone. And so knowing that is super helpful too, because you're not necessarily having to convince people that they have a problem that needs to be solved, right? They're already on the lookout and they're looking for inspiration. They're looking for something, whether to purchase in that moment or to come back to. I know when I was moving back up to DC over a year ago now, I had a Pinterest board of my DC apartment, you know, everything I wanted to be in there. And then when I moved up here, I went to that Pinterest board and I literally just loaded everything into my online shopping carts and I bought them, right? And so whether you're selling products or a service, it's really, really helpful because people are ready to purchase. Even if it's not in that moment, there's a very good chance that if they save your content, they'll come back to it to purchase something from you. And then kind of touch on it, but people are looking to Pinterest as a place for inspiration and education, right? So depending upon what they're looking for, some people, maybe they go there for just purchasing things, right? They want to think about gift ideas or party ideas or decoration or things like that. But other people, oftentimes and myself included, I'll go there and that's where I will pin content that I want to go back to if I want to learn something more, right? So if there's a course that someone's doing that I want to make sure I don't forget, or if there's fonts that I really enjoy, I do that a lot for design. So if I'm looking for some inspiration, or if someone has something like a freebie or a downloadable, something that I want, it's a really great place for me to house all of that where I know I can go back to it and it's all organized and super simple. And Pinterest is constantly coming out with new content. I mean, over the last couple months even, there's been a big boom in their shopping offerings that people can purchase directly from the app, all this fun stuff. So all that to say, Pinterest is a really great tool regardless of what industry you're in. But it does take a little bit more of a different approach than most typical social media platforms. So let's talk a little bit about what that means. All right, so the first thing to create a great pin, and we're gonna go through these today, is you wanna pick a solid goal. I know if you've been coming to these mini sessions, I feel like I touch on goals every single time, but they are what's really, really helpful for a variety of reasons. From the beginning to the end, it's what helps drive you towards what you're creating, right? So if you have a goal to generate more business, then you can look back on the work that you've done and see whether or not you've hit that goal and what has contributed to it. So we'll talk about that in a minute, but that's a really important piece and the most important spot to start. It doesn't have to be that every single pin has a goal, but thinking about how you want to use Pinterest, how you want to use Pinterest in a specific season of your business is really important. And setting that goal, writing it down, keeping it somewhere that you can refer back to it is really helpful. The second thing I want to talk about is creating the graphic and making sure you're using proper dimensions. So because Pinterest is a visual platform, much like Instagram, the graphics that you create matter, and they matter a lot. So people are going there to be inspired, to see something that'll catch their eye and make them stop scrolling, similar to most other platforms in that sense. And so making sure that you are spending time and taking the time to think about what you're creating and designing is really important. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. And then lastly, you're going to want to optimize for SEO. So because it functions a lot like a search engine, just like you want to optimize your website for search engine optimization, you want to optimize your pins with the right keywords and hashtags and content so that people can find them really easily. So we're going to touch on that just a little bit. All right, so first let's talk about picking your goal. So do you want to drive traffic? Do you want to generate leads? Do you want to gain subscribers? So this is a picture of the home feed that comes up for me when I go on Pinterest. And so there's a variety of things we see here, right? And so ideas for a spooky Halloween at home. That's, you know, something that you can get inspired in. But there's also this how to remove the background for an Adobe Photoshop, or you know, a month from now, all these different quotes and things, and each of them are attached to a specific website. And so for some of them, they're going to take me to a downloadable, something that I can give my email information to that person and they will send me a free downloadable. Other things are going to take me to blog posts. Some are going to take me to shops. Others are going to just take me to someone's homepage. The low carb, high profile one that you see there with the yellow, red, pink, and blue, that is a beverage. So it's called Bev. It's a canned wine company. I actually really like them. And so that is something, if I click on that, it's going to take me directly to their shop, right? So I'll be able to purchase right there. So knowing where you want to lead people, what you want to do. So if you want to gain subscribers, having a freebie that says, you know, 10 ideas for your Halloween party, or, you know, 10 ideas for your 2021 content calendar, like whatever it is, this is the perfect place to do that. And so thinking about what your goal is also going to inform what kind of content you create, not just on Pinterest, but also on your website, right? So if you're giving away a freebie, you've got to have that freebie made. If you are looking to make a sale, you've got to have your website set up for that sale. So having this goal in place is a really helpful tool to make sure you have everything that you need the way it needs to be. All right, the next thing is creating a strong graphic. So making sure it's visual, obviously, and appealing. So this was just something, it's a little template from Canva, which I highly recommend. Canva is great. And I just popped in and picked it. You know, I could throw something different on here. I could adjust the colors to match my branding a little bit more, all these different pieces. But the way that you want to think through this is what's going to catch someone's eye, what's going to make them want to stop and say, okay, I want to know more. I want to understand exactly what this is about. Does this match maybe your aesthetic? Like, for example, I might pin this not just for what it actually is offering, but because I like this graphic, right? Maybe I'm thinking, oh, I have something that I want to create this holiday season, and this is something I like, and I'm looking to get some inspiration. Let me pin this so I can come back to it. So there's a variety of reasons that people are going to pin your content, and it's not always going to be for what you think, but you never know. I could pin this and then go to their website and it actually has content that I find really helpful or interesting. So definitely making sure that you think through, you know, what's going to catch people's eye, what is branded, what makes sense, all that information, and then making sure you're not putting too much information on the graphic. So a lot of times people might post an infographic, which is great. Those are really interesting, get high engagement, but if there's too much information, it can become really overwhelming. So consider what works really well, and know that a lot of times this is going to be leading someone to something else. So maybe you're creating an infographic that has 100 statistics about, you know, something. And so maybe you just put the first 10 on that infographic and then people can go and look at the rest. So making sure that you are creating that content and being thoughtful in how you design it. The other thing you want to do is make sure that your dimensions are correct. So the typical ideal dimensions for a Pinterest graphic are going to be 1000 by 1500 pixels, and that you can go directly into Canva. If you haven't used Canva before, this is my plug for it. It is awesome. I use it literally every single day for all of my clients and for my business to create really great graphics, because it has the dimensions already set out for you. So you literally can just pop in there, click on the Pinterest template, and they'll give you a bunch of templates, or you can design something brand new. So many great things, but making sure you have the right dimensions is really important, because that also is going to communicate something to your audience. And if you aren't taking the time to create the right dimensions or to create a really nice graphic, people just are not going to take you seriously, right? They're going to think this person doesn't know what they're doing, or there's just something off. And so meet people's expectations there and make sure you're designing within the right dimensions and in a way that's going to be pleasing and matches your brand. All right, the next one is optimize for SEO. So here are a couple different options, but really what you want to do is think about the keywords that you want people to find your content when they're searching for, right? So I go to Pinterest a lot for recipes. And so whenever I go and I look, I'm typing in easy recipes, easy chicken recipes, easy, egg recipes, like whatever. Typically it's always going to be an easy recipe, right? So thinking about how people are searching for your content is how you want to create these captions. So for example, for my business, if I wanted to talk about social media, or let's say I wanted to promote this webinar or the blog that goes along with this, I could say, 10 easy steps or 3 easy steps to creating great pins for your Pinterest page, right? So if someone was thinking, oh, I want to know more about how to create a great pin, they might say Pinterest inspiration, or maybe they're going to type in social media, like all these different things that people might type in. And some of this just comes with knowing your audience, doing a little bit of research and seeing what performs well. The other thing is you're going to want to use some hashtags related to your pin and topic. And this is similar to that keyword piece, but making sure that you're using hashtags. I recommend anywhere from 2 to 5. Really typically 2 to 3 is your best bet. And again, it could be something like recipes, it could be branded, it could be interior design if you're an interior designer, right? Whatever it is that people are naturally going to be searching for, or that is complementary to what you're posting about. So maybe I'm looking for a Christmas recipe, right? And maybe I find a cake recipe. You might hashtag desserts, like cake, desserts, Christmas desserts, those kinds of things, because even if I'm not specifically typing in desserts, if I'm looking for a cake for Christmas, there's a good chance that I would be interested in other types of desserts. So, just going through and thinking about all the options that would still make sense with that specific thing. So if it's a cupcake or cake recipe, hashtagging cookies doesn't necessarily make sense, but, hashtagging that, Christmas desserts would be. So consider that, ask around, do some research, see what other people in your industry are doing, and that they're doing well, and see kind of what works for you. A lot of this is trial and error as well. And think about what your ideal client is going to be looking for. So I actually had a conversation with someone earlier today about how a lot of times it can be tough because we use the same word and we mean it differently, right? So don't try to avoid using jargon that kind of like the layman's person would not understand, right? Or that they wouldn't necessarily easily use. So someone might search for Instagram marketing, but they may not search for a social media manager, right? So if I want to connect with someone who's looking for Instagram marketing support or help, then I want to make sure I'm using that kind of hashtag and those keywords, and just kind of adjusting for that. So play around with it, see what works for you. And you'll be surprised how helpful some of these things are. And then make sure the connected link works and it leads to relevant and valuable content. So similar to how Google does things is if your page that is linked to this pin is not user-friendly or does not perform well, or is easily left and quickly left, it's not going to perform as well, right? So Google and Pinterest, like all of these sites, they're looking not just at the content you're creating on the page, but even where it goes. So if the link is broken or it, only works half the time, it's not going to perform as well. Not only is the platform not going to like it, but the people who are looking for it are going to get frustrated, right? So consider looking through all those different pieces and just make sure that everything works properly, that it looks correct, and that it makes sense. The other thing too I wanted to mention with your keywords is you can add them in the titles. Like on here, we see that the titles are pretty long and the descriptions are pretty short. Not only is that helpful because the titles are larger font, so people are going to see them better, but that's another place that Google and Pinterest are essentially going to scan and say, okay, it's in the title, like this must be super important or relevant. That's really, really helpful. So consider all of these different pieces as you're creating your content and adjusting for it. The other thing here is we see kind of with the visuals, I want to just touch in on those. These are really simple, right? They're not overwhelming. They're branded, but they're not like super in your face. And so you can really tell what the post is about, and they're really aesthetically pleasing, right? Like that food looks delicious. I would want to eat it, and it looks nice and clean, like all of these different things. So make sure that when you're using images, whether they're pictures that you've taken or maybe stock images or other images that you've selected online, that they're really high quality and that they look good. Because there's so much visual focus on Pinterest, you're going to want to make sure you're taking the time to really look at your visuals and make sure that they're worthwhile, right? And then the other piece here too is where you pin it. So when you create a pin, you actually pin them to your board. And so you can create boards that have keywords in them. So if someone's looking for a recipe, maybe you include that in one of your board titles, like chicken recipes, casserole recipes. This one's about books. Maybe it's, books I love, books about race, books about, or biographies, like different things like that can be really helpful. So just take some time, play around with it. The really nice thing is you can change these at any time, but they're also evergreen. So that means they stick around for a while. And so you might post something today and someone may not see it for the first time until 3 months from now. So make sure that the content you're creating isn't time sensitive, or if it is, make sure you either pull it down or archive it or something like that, because otherwise it can get really confusing, right? So if you're promoting something that is no longer going on or that has ended, it can be really frustrating for the person who finds it 3 months later and is excited, and then it's no longer there. So I know that's a lot. Those are a couple quick things that I wanted to touch on. And then we have about 10 minutes now for a Q&A. So if you have any questions about Pinterest or about how to use it for the holidays or just for business in general, now's the time to ask. I know that was short and sweet, but I thought, it can get overwhelming. So, all right, let's see. One question. Are creating pins the best for linking to your website? Yes. So if you are going to link to a site, I like to link specifically to blog posts, partly because there's a resource directly there. But if not, let's say you want to post a picture from like a recent trip or something like that. You can post it and to have it take you directly to the website. That's what I really like to do. You could do, like if you're running a sale, you could have it go directly to a sales page. But basically, anytime you're creating a pin, it's best to link it to your website, or you always have to link it to some kind of site. So that is the most helpful way to do it. Great question. Right, let's see, any other ones? You can drop them in the chat or the Q&A box. If storyboards are coming soon, I can't think off the top of my head if I'm thinking of the same thing you are. I'm trying to think if there's something similar. I know that they've just added a lot of new features to Pinterest that I've been exploring and trying to get the hang of. So I would definitely say check out the site and just play around with it, or check out their blog. So if you just type like Pinterest news or Pinterest updates, they'll have a whole slew of information there, including when things are coming out. I know that they've been rolling out a few different things in different places. I know they've been really focusing on e-commerce as well. So there's like a million things that you can buy straight from from there. Oh, story pins. That one I haven't heard of. I'll need to do some research on that. They're doing story pins. That would be interesting. I'm trying to think of how they would do that. Great question. Okay, Gail, you're asking, should businesses start with Pinterest to gain subscribers before other social media? I think, honestly, using it in tandem with a couple of other ones is really helpful. So the thing with Pinterest is, like I said, it's evergreen. So while you may not see an immediate spike, it's a much more consistent, what's the word I'm looking for? A consistent flow of content, if that makes sense. So someone might see something that you posted 6 months ago, which could gain you a new subscriber, but you didn't have to put in any extra work, right? So that can be really, really helpful. But if you're looking to promote something and gain some followers quickly or gain more subscribers quickly, I would use it in tandem with like Facebook or Instagram or Twitter. So that's a great question. Yeah, I'll have to research these story pins. That's really interesting. I feel like I've seen them, but I've been catching up on some other things at the same time. So I'll have to do a little deeper dive on those. I know stories are becoming super popular on all of the platforms, which in some ways is great. I think it's a really helpful tool to connect with people, but it can also be, it's just like a whole nother, it's like almost its own separate like platform in some ways because of the way each platform uses it. So these are great questions, you guys. Okay, let's see. A couple more minutes. And if you guys have any questions about specifically like your business, feel free to reach out. Anyone who attends these mini sessions gets a free 30-minute consultation. So we can definitely talk about what works for you, what's going to be most beneficial for your business, how to approach Pinterest. But the nice thing with all of these things is you can really play around with it. So if you haven't used Pinterest before, I would say, take a couple days maybe and spend a couple minutes over a few days just creating new pins, exploring kind of your profile, all of that kind of stuff, because it can really help build up your business. Awesome. All right, got a couple more minutes, so any last minute questions? If not, you're always welcome to reach out. I'm happy to answer any questions you have either via email or over the phone. I think that's pretty much it though. Awesome. Well, we ended 5 minutes early. I know this one was super quick, but I didn't want to kind of overwhelm anyone with a bunch of information. Sometimes I feel like I packed so much in, we don't get to look at all of it. So, oh, one more question. Okay, how would I start with, let's see, Gail, can you explain that a little bit more? How would you start with room? Oh, rentals, with room rentals. That's a great question. I would say, so if I'm understanding correctly, if you wanted to promote room rentals, for example, you could post a picture of the room and then have it linked to, oh, awesome, a homesteading business. So if you wanted to do that, I would say take a picture of the room, take a picture of the space, and then have it link directly to wherever that person would make that purchase, basically. So let's say you're looking to rent out some space. You can take one picture of it from one angle, and then you can take another from another angle, and that's already 2 pins there. And then that links to your website page that has all the information about how to make that room rental, how to pay for it, all that fun stuff. So that would kind of be that would honestly be a great way to use Pinterest, is people would kind of see it, as long as it's like, that's where that beauty comes in. So making sure it's a really high res photo, making sure that it's apparent what you're offering, can be really, really helpful. Yes, pins are like uploads, exactly. Yes. Kind of like if you were to add like a photo to your Instagram feed or to your Facebook feed, you just pin them to a board as opposed to a news feed, but it populates on other people's news feeds. I feel like I feel like I could go back through and do a quick run through on Pinterest. That might be a webinar I'll have to do soon, because it's definitely a different type of system. But once you kind of explore it and start working through it, it's pretty quick to learn. So these are great questions. All right. Wonderful. Okay, well, next week we are going to touch on, I believe, if I'm thinking properly, looking at how to end the year well. So just looking kind of how you might want to approach the content you're creating, how to approach preparing for the holidays, all that fun stuff. So if you want to join, definitely join us next week. Yes, so anything, the same rules apply for wellness and exercises. Yep, basically anything that you want people to see or go to, whatever web page, adding it to that pin, which is like an upload, is going to help with that. That's perfect. Awesome. All right, guys. Well, I am so glad you all showed up today. If you have any more questions, feel free to reach out. Gail, feel free to shoot me an email. I'm happy to jump on a 30-minute call with you and talk through any of these pieces. And if you guys want to join me next week, I think that'd be super fun. But I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. All right. Bye-bye.